Hey guys, this is the second of two jQuery videos. I think this one will be a short one. Just going to show you how to add events and listeners. So we did all the DOM manipulation stuff that we need to do for this course in the last video. You can go to jQuery.com and look at the full API if you want to unlock the full power of jQuery, but I think we've got quite a bit in there now with animations and DOM manipulation and so on. By the way, if you want to know what this is behind me, this is the Sinclair ZX80 computer, home computer that came out in about 1980, hence the 80, I think. It had a Z80 processor in it. It was the first home computer that we ever had at my house. It came when I was in 81, I think, when I was 11 years old, or maybe the end of 1980. And yeah, so it was the first computer I ever programmed, and I still have it. It's in a shadow box on my desk at the college. It doesn't really run anymore. Had 1 kilobyte of RAM, 1,024 bytes of random access memory. My dad, who was an electronic engineer, did some surgery on it and expanded that to 4 kilobytes of RAM, which with extra chips hung out the back on a little circuit board that he added to it. Anyways, that was the first computer I programmed in BASIC. All right, let's get to it. Events and listeners in jQuery. I've got the jQuery sandbox up here again, but this time we're not going to play with it in the console. Actually, maybe I'll move this over. We're going to play with it in, hang on, let me find it here, by putting code into the page itself. There we go, jQuery sandbox. And let's open this with code. And maybe we'll do this properly. Maybe let's create a new folder here called JavaScript, and inside there I will put a new text file called code.js. Just call it that. Yep. And we'll put this into the file here too. Okay, so hang on, let me just rearrange a little bit more. I guess I need a fair bit of space here for the sandbox. Make it a bit smaller. Let's zoom it out a bit. That way we can move this over and move this over. Okay, so you can see in the code here, I'm loading the jQuery API from Google, like that. So that's one way to do it. As I reviewed in the other video, you can also download it and just put it into your own project, and that's probably a better thing to do than this, because if Google goes down, then it'll break my site, where my site could be up, but Google APIs is down. Could happen. But we're going to go script source equals js/code.js, like that, to add in the code that I'm writing. Notice I'm putting it after I load the library. I have to do that, or the dollar function won't be available when I get to my code. Also notice I'm putting it in the head here before any of the DOM is actually created. So that means I'm going to have to use, well, if this was raw JavaScript, we would use the Windows load event. But because this is jQuery, we're going to use $document.ready. So this is called the ready function. And it is very much like the Windows load event. Notice there's no quotation marks here. We're putting the entire document object into the jQuery function. So this returns, as I said last video, you don't have to put a selector here. You can put an object there, and it will return a new jQuery object that is wrapped around that whatever object or list of objects you put here. So this attaches a special jQuery function called the ready function onto here. So the code inside this function here will fire when the document is ready, and it's a little bit different from add event listener for window.add event listener load. If you put your code inside of a window load event, it will wait until all the files have been loaded before it runs your code. This code in here will go a little bit sooner than that, as soon as the DOM is ready. So before any images are loaded, before CSS and stuff like that is loaded, it will run your program. So it goes a little faster, and it's a little bit more, it smooths over again some of the differences between different browsers. So in any case, this is basically our main method when we're running jQuery. Now we want to add, let's say we want to add an event. Maybe we want to be able to paint in here. So we want to add an event to all the TDs to change their background color when we mouse over them. Okay, so it looks like this. First we select the elements that we want to add a listener to, and then we call, hang on, I'm going to have to look at this because the naming is slightly different. Here's the list of events, or a list of events. We can also use these ones. Any event that we've used before is supported except for input. For some reason jQuery does not support the input event, so we just use key up. But we want mouse enter here, so it's not mouse over, it's mouse enter. So mouse enter, and then we just provide a function here. We have an optional event parameter if we want it. You don't have to put that there if you're not going to use it. And yeah, so what we can do here is we can say $self.css background color blue, like that. So there it is in full glorious jQuery. Not $self, $this. So again, here I'm using the dollar function with a selector, so we'll go and get all the TD elements and then apply this function to all of the TD elements, add it as a mouse enter listener. And then within each of those, the this object, as usual, refers to the object that is the subject of the event. And then putting the dollar syntax around it means that I can use all the jQuery stuff. So I'm going to save this, reload this, and I should probably check in the console. Okay, no errors, so it looks like things loaded. And then I should get, there we go. So there we go. All right, so there's my mouse enter function. Pretty easy. If I want to add a click function, I could do something like this. Let's do instructions dot click, like that. Function. We don't really need the event parameter, so I'm not going to use it. Should really have a semicolon here. And I'll go $this dot, how about slide up? So when you click on it now, when you click on the instructions here, it slides up. And we've got these events out here. That's basically all there is to it. There is something else that I can show you. Let me just, so we remember we have a click function and a mouse enter function on these. Let me just reload. Go over here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Reload. Okay, if I go $instructions dot click. Now if I put a function in here, it will add a new listener to that click event. So function, I don't know, console.log hi, like that. Okay, so now there are two click events on this function. When I click it, it'll slide up and it will also say hi over here. Okay, just reloaded the page there. But if you call click or any of these event functions, event methods, if you call them with no parameters, it will trigger that event. So this basically is kind of like I'm clicking the instructions. So there you go, like that. Or you can go td.odd.mouse enter. So calling this will trigger the mouse enter event on any of the odd numbered, which I think are the red squares. So it's as if the mouse entered all of those squares. So that's you don't often need to use that, but it's useful to know that that's there, that you can do that. Yeah, and like I said, I think that's it. So when you're doing jQuery, make sure you load your script after you've loaded the jQuery library. If you invert the order of these, it will not work. In fact, let's show what that looks like when we do that. So save that, reload over here. Nothing is working, and I get an uncaught reference error. Dollar is not defined. And it comes from code.js line 1, which is this line right here. So as soon as I tried to execute the dollar, it didn't work because I did it in the wrong order. And if you're gonna, wherever you're putting your code, it's generally, most of the time, it's best practice to use the document ready function, which looks like this, instead of the add event listener load function on the window. And then you can add event handlers to one element or to multiple elements by using a selector here and calling the appropriate function. Click, double click, mouse enter, mouse move, focus, blur, change, key up, any of them. They're all defined, and you can use them. Okay, so here's the list. This I talked about. This is just how you can use the dollar function on the document object and on the this object as well. By the way, just a quick tip: don't try to do this with an arrow function. If you're a big fan of arrow functions, the one thing that's different about arrow functions is that they don't treat the this keyword the same way. So generally speaking, for event handlers, you don't want arrow functions because often you're using the this keyword, but arrow functions don't treat the this keyword in the same way. It can't be rebound. Yeah, and use the document ready function. That's it. There's a few exercises for you to try here. If you feel like, I would try at least add an event listener to something. This is using the jQuery sandbox, and this is using another example called callback test. Some of them get pretty fancy, but if you think you got the basic idea, then it might be time to go and take a look at the jQuery final project jQuery, which is in module 5b. This is a little one-page plan on how you're going to use jQuery in your project. Okay, so I'm hoping by now you have a final project plan written. This is like a very short one-page document, can be less than a page. Please do it in a word processor. Put your name, student number, and the name of your app at the top. So your app should have a name. And then highlight at least 2 ways you plan to use jQuery. Okay, so here's a bunch of ideas: animations and effects, basic DOM manipulation, event handling. I mean, you might be thinking, I'm going to use it for everything I can. That's fine, but just pick out 2 specific things you're going to do. And then I want to see a title that sort of captures how you're going to use jQuery, a description of the tasks, why you're going to use jQuery for this task. Try and be as specific as possible. Why is it better to use jQuery here than raw JavaScript? And a specific code example. Now, you may not have written your entire project yet, but just give me an example, what you think it might look like. Show a piece of JavaScript code along with its jQuery replacement. So instead of writing this, I will write this. Okay? And it's due, I think, the Monday of next week by midnight. It's worth 5% of the project grade, which translates to 1% of your total grade. Okay? So please get to work on that. The next, when I do this live, most of the time students, I give them 20 minutes and they write this up in 20 minutes and hand it in. So I'm not expecting it to take you a long time. The next thing you should do, you've reached the end of the videos, but there is a module 5C on security. I'm going to present the information in that and show you some examples in class, but I would like you to read the guide, and there is one last deliverable before the final hand-in of the final project is a security audit. So I outline a bunch of security issues in the lecture, in the module guide, and in my lecture that's coming. I want you to assess your app for security issues. It says using the code you've written so far and the plan for the app that you submitted a few weeks ago. So if you haven't written any code, you've got your plan, so audit the plan. If you have some code written, you've got the code and the plan, and you can audit them both. Okay, so assess your app for code security and data security. And you'll have to read the handout to get into this. But first thing is your code safe from injection attacks? What steps have you taken to make it safe? What steps will you take to make it safe? Okay, is your code protected from runtime and logic errors? And then under data security, what are you doing to keep the user's information secure on their devices, in transmission, and on your server? And I go through a bunch of ways to do that in the guide. Are there any ways that an attacker might gain access to your user's data, or what steps are you taking to minimizing the risk? Okay, so it's due in a few days. Yeah, use the time in class to get started. It says here we don't have in-class time, but get going on it. At least jot down some notes, and it would be a great idea if you've done that, if you've read the security stuff and you've got the notes in front of you. Then when I go to talk about this stuff, you can add more notes to it as I speak, and show you examples, and you can make your security audit stronger. And yeah, this here, I expect you to follow at least a minimal set of best practices no matter what. Okay, safety from injection attacks, password hiding, credentials checking. Even if you didn't specifically write it in here, I would like to, I need to see that in your project. So that's stuff that you need to do. And I think it's, yeah, again, this can just be a 1 page, maybe 1.5 page, 2 pages at the most of writing. And it's worth, again, 1% of your final mark, which is 5% of your project. Okay, so read over that. The everything that you need is in the modules section here, way down here under module 5. So 5, the security guide is here. There's some optional stuff too if you want to look at it, stuff that we took out of the course. There's a little bit of code here, but I'm going to go over this code in class, and there's no real exercises. There's only optional exercises. But here's where you'll find the jQuery integration plan handout and the security integration plan handout, the security audit handout. Okay, so I will see you in class. We have a lot to talk about. Bring your questions, and I really hope that you've watched these videos and that you have read over the security stuff and that you're ready to talk about it in class. Okay, see you in class.